Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session Ethical Hacking Career Pathways, Navigating Opportunities and Specializations. I am Ritika Chakraborty, and I will be your host for the day. Before we get started, we would like to go over a few house rules for our attendees. The session will be in listen only mode and will last for an hour, out of which the last 10 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. If you have any questions during the webinar or organizers to the organizers or our speaker, use the Q&A window, and also if you face any audio video challenges, please check your internet connections or you may log out and log in again. And very important announcement for our audience. We have started CPE credit certifications for our attendees. The criteria to get the CPE credit certificates, the attendee needs to attend the full webinar and then write an email to cybertalks@ecouncil.org. Also, we would like to announce to our audience about the special handouts. Take the screenshot of the running webinar and post in your social media, LinkedIn or Twitter, tagging EC Council and use the hashtag CyberTalks. We will share free handouts to our first 10 audience. As a commitment to closing the cybersecurity workplace gap by creating multi-domain cyber technicians, EC Council pledges $3.5 million towards CCT education and certification scholarships to certify approximately 10,000 cyber professionals ready to contribute to the industry.
Did you know that you can be part of the lucrative cybersecurity industry? Even top companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, IBM, Facebook, and Dell all hire cybersecurity professionals. The cybersecurity industry has a 0% unemployment rate. The average salary for an entry-level cybersecurity job is about $100,000 per year in the United States. Furthermore, you don't need to know coding and learn from your home, and you get a scholarship to kickstart your career. Apply now. EC Council is pledging a $3.5 million CCT scholarship for cybersecurity career starters. Scan the QR code on the screen to apply for the scholarship. Fill out the form.
If you want to know more, kindly visit our website given in the chat section. Now about our speaker. Karl is a cybersecurity leader and innovator who serves as the CISO for Noname Security. He has over 25 years of experience leading innovative and diverse teams of technology and security professionals in financial services, retail, and the federal government. Previously, Karl served as the CISO for PennyMac Financial Services and City National Bank. He has a track record of providing CEOs, CTOs, and investors in cybersecurity with strategies for product market and customer success. Karl has also served as adjunct faculty for the University of Minnesota's MSST program since 2012. Right now, without any further delay, I am handing over the mic to you, Karl.
Hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Karl Mattson. Thank you for that introduction. Is screen sharing and audio, everything good here? Just to double check before I get rolling.
Yes, perfect.
Good. So thank you so much for joining us today. So the session we're covering today, ethical hacking career pathways. So a couple of notes. First of all, the session today is really focused to be informative for those who are joining the information security profession, joining as ethical hacking penetration testing. We'll talk about those career pathways. For those of you who are already in this career field, some of this might be territory you've covered. There's so much amazing content at the EC Council website, from recordings to training opportunities for those who are more advanced in their career. So please feel free to move over to another content. This is really for those who are entering the field, or perhaps who are maybe mid-career and coming from another area of IT or audit or project management, and who are looking to build a new skill set. So as Ritika mentioned about me, I'm a serial CISO. I've been in financial services for a couple of different companies as a CISO in risk and compliance, as well as now about 2 years ago, I took on the role CISO for Noname Security, which is a security startup. The education that I've had includes, I have an MBA. I have from a business and finance background by trade. And a couple of the things that I'd like to share today are really because I come from maybe a non-traditional background, but I'd like to share a few thoughts about how I think about ethical hacking and penetration testing, and how I both consume those as services, how I hire for teams, and then also just the thinking about the ethical legal considerations. Because for those of you who are thinking about a career as an ethical hacker, and whether it's as an independent or joining an organization, in a lot of ways, what I like to share is I like to share the perspective of the customer or the subject of testing efforts, because it's important that you as a professional position yourself in a way that is an advantage to organizations, and that's a really powerful skill set to have as an ethical hacker, and there are ways to apply that skill set to great advantage for organizations. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to talk a little bit about career pathways, different job descriptions and roles and responsibilities, and what those entail for somebody with an ethical hacking training background, as well as certifications, how we establish ourselves as professionals who are qualified and capable to take on those roles in the industry. We're also going to talk about the ethical and legal considerations, because this is, of course, the very first is, and so we need to really in on that and talk about what it means to be ethical in the discipline of cybersecurity. Then the last thing is we'll talk a little bit about career strategy. So managing your starting point in your career, but also ongoing, and how you equip yourselves for success over the long term. So the first thing is to think about ethical hacking as a discipline, but that discipline leads to a variety of different career opportunities. The first and most obvious like ethical hacking career path is that of a bug bounty hunter. That is the individual who often operates independently, works for themselves, or works as a part of a consortium like BugCrowd or HackerOne or Synac. But the objective of the bug bounty researcher and ethical hacker is to find and identify vulnerabilities, and then payment and rewards in exchange for that information. So, for example, if you go to a popular website and you identify that website is vulnerable to cross-site scripting, to submit that finding to the company, and you're paid a reward in return. So the bug bounty community is enormous, because there are number one, there are many people who perform bug bounty research as their primary job and as their primary source of income. They do it all day, and there's also quite a number of professionals in the field who have a call it a regular job, work for a company, and they may or may not even be a ethical hacker or tester in their day job, but at night they maybe take on some campaigns, and they're part of a bug bounty community, and that's sort of a side career. And those are some great opportunities. One thing that I think is pertinent for those who are bug bounty specialists is that because there are literally tens of thousands of security researchers and bug bounty hunters out there, it very quickly you learn sort of like the top of the food chain of skilled ethical hackers is very handsomely rewarded, and those who have a sort of lesser skill level have a hard time, making a living doing that. So it takes time to develop the skills and the capacity to get paid to find those kind of vulnerabilities on a regular basis. The second area to focus on the skill set of ethical hacking, the things that you learn in training and certifications, applying those as part of a penetration testing or a vulnerability management team for an organization. The primary difference really is that the penetration tester almost always includes their testing efforts specifically on a system or a business process that has a defined scope. So for example, we have our internal team perform a 1-week test on the commercial website. And during that week, we established rules of engagement about times of day for techniques used. We conduct the test, and then at the end of the test, we stop testing, and then we turn those over to the customer, essentially. So penetration testing applies almost all the same skills that you would as a bug bounty hunter, but you're doing it from a perspective of a predefined, agreed upon scope and engagement. Organizations do employ penetration testers, both as internal employees as well as paid external services firms where you're paid sort of by engagement. And that overwhelmingly has been the organizations that I've led and the organizations that I've hired have been focused penetration testing efforts, moving across the organization, focusing on the high risk technology information, data assets, so that we can test those efforts sort of periodically for vulnerabilities. And so the way that I think about the penetration tester job is it applies the same skill sets of ethical hacking that we'll talk about here in a few minutes, but usually you're doing so as an employee of an organization, not as an independent agent as you would be as a bug bounty researcher. The third area is more general security roles. So I'm going to do a personal shout out to Daryl Selga. I'm going to embarrass Daryl. As a member of an internal auditor, he was a fantastic penetration tester, a fantastic ethical hacker, and he did so as part of an internal audit team. There are so many cybersecurity roles where the skill set of the ethical hacker becomes very, very important to being able to perform that role to a great degree, to perform it and to be efficient and effective. So I think of auditors, security engineers. So the security engineers are those who build and deploy technologies like web application firewall, SIM platforms, EDR on our endpoints. Having an ethical hacking background and training oftentimes makes the persons that serve in those roles fantastically effective compared to their peers, because they understand, for example, the mindset of the attacker and thinking creatively about how to get around security controls. And who better to best design defensive controls than an individual who is very capable of circumventing those controls. That's a very important role to have in an organization, which is a general security practitioner, where at least a couple of the individuals on the team have an ethical hacking skill set. And so whether the career pathway that you're considering is as an independent agent, whether it's as a member of a ethical hacking or a penetration testing team internally to a team, or whether it's future roles or other security roles, there's definitely a place for the ethical hacking skill set and mindset in the organization. And so one motivator I hope to offer is that this is really a golden age to be entering the field of ethical hacking, because you have really emerging over the last couple of years is because of the bug bounty platforms and as well as the skill sets across the board in general for cybersecurity. This is an amazingly great opportunity time to be bringing those skills to the table, because you have so many options at your disposal of how you can apply those skills in a cybersecurity career. We'll talk a little bit later too. It's also the golden age of training and education, the ability for individuals to upskill themselves, not without reliance on their employer, but to do so independently as part of consortiums like EC Council and others that we'll talk about. So The basic skills knowledge required, and this is inclusive of whether you're a bug bounty hunter, a security researcher, the penetration tester who works internally on a vulnerability management team, whether you're the third-party pen tester hired to bring in, whether you work as an internal auditor or a consultant. These are the core skills that apply. You may have in different roles a little bit different mix of how you apply these, but they're really important to think about the core skills that make for a complete ethical hacking skill set. So first, ethical hacking concepts. Now, there are so many materials available, easy counsel and otherwise about like frameworks. So for example, conducting red team events or white box and black box and gray box testing. So ethical hacking frameworks is really methodologies for tackling a penetration test or an ethical hacking event. So we won't dive into those, but those are sort of the structural things about thinking how we tackle a problem as an ethical hacker. The second is knowledge of networking, and I'm going to put this together with the next one, which is operating systems knowledge. So an individual's knowledge of operating systems and of networking really is the sort of the core technical foundation knowledge that we all as security professionals need to possess. So knowledge of like TCP/IP networking fundamentals and internet technologies that are used by organizations, as well as then operating systems, Windows administration, Linux administration. Those fundamental skill sets of being an IT administrator, those are the core concepts that if we don't get those right first, some of the more sophisticated security disciplines that we're going to layer on top of them, they cannot fall apart. So I would suggest, particularly those who are thinking about joining the cybersecurity field, ethical hacking or otherwise, people who come from an IT administration, network administration background are perfectly well suited to succeed in cybersecurity because those individuals already possess many of the core skills that we need to have as ethical hackers and as security professionals in general. The fourth area would be vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. So this is the sort of combination of skills and processes that we use to identify vulnerabilities in an environment, whether it's scanning technologies, from Nmap to flawless and Rapid7 and Tenable scanners. What we do is we think about how do we identify our vulnerabilities and how do we test systems for vulnerabilities, and those are procedural disciplines that we have to have familiarity of, and understanding, for example, the difference between a vulnerability that is sort of theoretical and the vulnerabilities which are actively exploitable by an attacker. Another area is tools mastery. So if you spent any amount of time in the discipline of ethical hacking, you're probably familiar with tools like Metasploit, which are really workbenches for a hacker and a tester to practice their craft. And so if we were talking about the career field carpentry, this is the workbench. Mastery of one's tools is an important part of that. And so whether it's the the suite of tools available on Kali Linux that you use, there's of course a lot of commercially available tools that organizations use. Tools mastery is important. Web application security. So this is the outside in attacker techniques, from cross-site scripting to SQL injection that are just they're so common and they're so present in a toolkit of techniques that we use. Those are really foundational techniques to learn as a hacker. The next one will be cryptography. So learning about encryption, decryption, cryptographic techniques, and understanding of cryptography mechanically is very important because it's going to specifically inform how you go after an set or how you go for your target, and using that knowledge to spend your time wisely, focusing on the chess game that is to capitalize on either encryption weaknesses or avoid assets because their encryption is makes them a target that's not desirable. Another area, of course, is social engineering awareness. We as testers and as defenders need to be very aware of the human element, and the human element of our discipline is the awareness of how the human can be exploited, whether that's from the call center or email box or the telephone. Those human factors that allow us to penetrate a network or to break into something, we have to be conscious of that as attackers and defenders, and practice in some of those techniques to attack and defend on the human layer of defense. Security controls and technologies. This is really an understanding of the technologies that are designed to stop you. As an ethical hacker, as a bug bounty researcher, it is important to understand a web application firewall, an IDS and IPS, an EDR system, because those are technologies which are designed to stop you, and it's an understanding of how those technologies work. That's critical to understanding, for example, how to circumvent them, or how to identify if they're misconfigured, or how to turn them off. And that's an important piece, because we have to, if we're identifying a vulnerability, those are the technologies we're trying to get past. Then the last is ethical and legal considerations. And we're going to talk more about the ethical and legal considerations, but it is unlikely that anybody in the field of ethical hacking will be able to survive for any length of time without conforming to best practices. Best practices ethically. Certainly there are legal considerations. And so while it's listed here last, I would want to spend a little bit of time on this, because employing this skill set is sort of dangerous. It's like learning how to use a handgun, right? There may be excellent reasons to do so, but without proper safety training in the wrong hands, these are ethical techniques that are also used oftentimes by the attackers who are committing crimes. So let's talk for a minute about the certification process, because I think a lot of us in the field of cybersecurity, we think about certifications and whether certifications are necessary, and whether they should be included in job descriptions. So first things first, I'd like to share the opinion that the certification is absolutely the starting point in a career, because what a certification does for an individual is it equips them with the sort of foundational knowledge about all those categories we talked about: tools, operating systems, networking technologies, ethical and legal considerations, processes and procedures, defensive technologies. As a professional entering the field, it's important that we hit all of those notes, and that's what certification does. Is it prompts us to learn the sort of the composite body of information that gives us the starting point. And so that's what I think about certifications are: a starting point. They're a baseline level of knowledge, and then we can go to more advanced and sophisticated certifications. It will always be the case that it's true that a person could accidentally be an excellent without. I would emphasize more like than on purpose, because it is absolutely true that a person can develop many of the skills to be an excellent ethical hacker, bug bounty researcher, but that individual is going to have a hard time repeating that over the course of a career. And so it gives you recognition to an employer. You have the basic skills and you the basic pillars of knowledge. It validates that you understand the basics in such a way that I, as a hiring manager, can look at you as a candidate, and I can sort of validate that you have the base knowledge that I need you to perform for this role. Career advancement is important, of course, because we want to differentiate ourselves from peers. We want to be a complete professional in this field, and a certification is a part of that completion, just like on-the-job training is, just like excellent performance is, but certification is a part of that career advancement. And then the last thing, we'll talk more about this in a few minutes, is about the networking opportunities. So the ability to join a community. And that's one thing that's such a positive aspect of the ethical hacking community, is it is so community driven. There's the EC Council, but we'll talk about a couple of other communities too, where you as a professional have a home base of other peers that you can reach out to, that you're going to need to lean into from time to time for advice, for training, and job opportunities. That's the way that this field works, and it's a really great time to be a part of the field. So the CEH is at the very top of the list of the most recognized certifications in the industry. And so for somebody starting off in the field and looking to establish themselves as possessing the knowledge and the credibility, there couldn't be a better place to start than the Certified Ethical Hacker career path. So let's dive into the legal and ethical considerations and what that means. And this is important because I think that particularly when those of you who are starting your career, maybe you're still in college or you're thinking about this career field, the legal and ethical considerations of ethical hacking really need to be foundational pillars into the way that you take yourself into this field and the way you take about training. First is these are really 10 principles, so I'll go over these real quickly. It's the principle of permission, obtaining permission, and permission, of course, if you have if you're thinking about a public company with a public website, usually there's a privacy policy or there's a bug bounty policy. It's important to think about permission in terms of the way that you think about whether your ethical hacking activities are welcome or whether they are sort of explicitly not welcome. Welcome being improper authorization or improper attempts to test an asset. Scoping and limits, to thinking about clearly defining the scope of testing so that, for example, in the course of an ethical hacking exercise or a penetration testing or a bug bounty event, scope might you put limits on things. For example, the CEO of the organization that you're targeting, maybe his personal accounts and family are off limits, right? That's a reasonable scope to expect that there's limits, and so how far one can go to ethically test vulnerabilities of a system or an organization. Testing outside of scope or pre-agreed limits, can get a person in trouble, and so it's important to honor an agreed upon scope. So non-disclosure and confidentiality. This is really important for somebody who, of course, is sort of paid as an employee or as an external party. It's a little bit different with bug bounty researchers, but respecting the confidential information you come across. So, for example, if your intention is to be an ethical hacker and to identify vulnerabilities, if you come across sensitive data from a customer, respecting that customer is important, because if you share all that treasure trove of information on Twitter or and paste them, what you've essentially done is you've essentially taken this amazingly valuable piece of information that you have, which is how to secure the organization, how to secure the platform better. And now you've disrespected the person whose sensitive data was stolen. It's not their fault that the core organization was poorly secured. And so we want to respect the confidential information, particularly if you come across that as part of testing and researcher activities. So laws and regulations, this is of course key because not every jurisdiction considers ethics or legal boundaries the exact same way. So it is important that you consider the jurisdiction that you're located in, but also the subject of testing. So, for example, you might find that the government of Russia and the government of the United States and the government of Japan react slightly differently to the boundaries of scope and intention as to what's an ethical activity versus not, which sort of verges into the lane of criminal activity. So familiarity with laws and regulations, as you think about the certifications and training you're about to undertake, I would take that one very seriously. It's important to stay within the constraints of ethical, and ethical and legal are not the exact same everywhere in the world. The fifth one is sort of universally true. It's don't do harm. I have the privilege of my spouse is a physician, and the first principle of the Hippocratic Oath is to do no harm. So as an ethical hacker, it is important not to bring systems down, not to cause customers of a company exposing their data. Damage and disruption is sort of on its very face unethical activity. So your goal as an ethical hacker is to identify weakness and explain it, and think of yourself as the teacher. You're teaching the organization, you're teaching our industry how to secure systems that protect data. And by damaging those systems or disrupting those systems, it becomes the message of securing systems becomes lost because now people are focused on the damage created. Documentation reporting. It's really important, of course, as you go through an ethical hacking exercise or a security research, to document your findings. Because first of all, no matter sort of what role you serve in, if you've discovered something interesting or severe, um, what the first thing that the recipient of that information is going to do is they're going to validate that, they're going to recreate it. So a worst case scenario for a hacker is to discover something fantastic, but then not be able to retrace their steps again. And then that information is lost. It has to be validated by somebody independently. So recording your results, clear documentation, which tools you used, where were you at when you performed this test, that helps clarify all steps of the process for all stakeholders. Continuous learning. We're going to talk more about this, about learning and growth. This is a fantastic career field to be an independent learner. Professionalism, integrity. Professionalism, I think, is a broad abstract word, but I would ask you to think about this one element in professionalism. So if you have an ethical hacker skill set, and you possess, even within a security team, you possess unusual skills. Those skills are not always, they can be used to embarrass people. So here's the one piece of professionalism I'd suggest, is that the information that you're providing, the expertise and the skill, when you share that information to a subject, company, the individual, about their vulnerable systems, the measure of your professionalism is as if they want more. Um, we want to be professional in delivering information and results in a way that the recipient of those results is now better, is smarter. They're better equipped. They're better prepared to defend. And we want that information line to be welcome. So if you, as an ethical hacker or a tester, are turning over results and the results are sort of rejected, or it's hard to make a case, think about the way that we're communicating those results. We want those results to be an advantage. We want to empower organizations, and professionalism in this field is about empowering others to improve security, not about embarrassing them, because it's relatively easy to embarrass an organization with poor results. Empower the organizations you're working with to do better. The last thing, sorry, one more, informed consent, respecting privacy, handle information respectfully. Especially things like if you're using, password crackers. If the subject of that exercise does not wasn't informed, it was not aware of that, that's the kind of thing that can make them very nervous. So when you go into an engagement, particularly if you're an external or an internal penetration tester, make sure that the party that you're testing is fully aware of what it is that you're about to undertake. The last thing is dual responsibility. We've talked a little bit about this, but about identifying vulnerabilities and weaknesses, and the obligation to safeguard system data. Those two things are both a responsibility. So that's about respecting both your offensive skills, but you are also accountable for using those offensive skills for defensive safeguarding benefit, versus the reputational impact alone of embarrassing an organization or abusing data. Ethical responsibility is both of those things simultaneously. So let's talk a little bit about career management. First and foremost, the EC Council really is the sort of the centerpiece of ethical hacking. As you start your career, think about these opportunities. There are the training programs, which are formalized, that are part of a certification pathway to CEH, CPentest. These are increasingly advanced levels of sophisticated certifications and training that are rigorous, and they follow a predefined pathway to achieve a certification as an end. There's also quite a number of just sort of topical specific subject areas where you, as a continuous learner, have the advantage of being trained up on new concepts independently of the certification, but really as more of like a continuing development as a professional. Advanced degrees, I think of those as more like the master's degree levels, where it's multiple courses as part of a curriculum that lead to like a master's degree sort of level of degree program. And then the last is the community, because as a as a participant in this journey with EC Council, there are tens of thousands of other professionals who are in their journey professionally, either at the beginning, the middle, or senior executive participants, and the ability then to connect with that community for training, for mentorship, for leaning into your peers for advice. I actually have a point on that here in the next slide. But as the community goes, that's going to be a part of your journey here, which is to engage with the rest of the world's community that's going through these continuous development efforts, but also then the ongoing professional maintenance. So the CEH is a fantastic place to start as a certification, but in general, regardless of the pathway that you take for a formalized education, there's a community there at EC Council for you to plug into. So aside from the EC Council, this is really part of being the golden age of ethical hacking right now, is that there are such a wide variety of communities that sort of have a specialty, or they each have a little bit of a different flavor to them. I think the EC Council's very broad in terms of its mandate and its support package, but then we have communities like OWASP, HackerOne communities, Buck the Box. So some of these have, for example, CTF exercises, capture the flag, where it's competitive efforts, where you can measure yourself against industry peers, which can be very effective at driving excellent skills. And so strongly encourage anybody joining this field to think about being a member of a couple of different communities, because you'll find that there are different community benefits to you as certain skill sets, certain networking opportunities, and ways of learning new techniques that dramatically improve your career outlook in the long term. B-sides conferences and like I think in the US in particular, I just find that the B-sides communities are fantastically effective for an individual, especially somebody who might be a security researcher working independently. The ability to plug into a community that's local, where you can talk with your peers on a regular basis about every aspect of your career, and just socially. That's a really important part, that especially for anybody who works from home or works independently, to have a network of peers that you can lean into is very important. So all of these are hyperlinked, by the way, and maybe I should have mentioned this at the top. I'll have my contact information at the end, or you can find me on LinkedIn. There's nothing about today's presentation that is anything other than I would love to send it to everybody. The EC Council will have it posted, of course, but I'd be thrilled to provide more links and resources, at the conclusion. Training experience. These are more communities, tools, places that you can go to learn and develop. From EC Council, all of these are resources at your disposal, and that's where being an ethical hacker is, in some ways, a little bit of an outlier in the security discipline, because I think no matter what organization you work for, I would encourage everybody in this field to look at themselves as they have to take on their own career development and training themselves. There are not a lot of organizations, except for the largest in the world, that have substantial training internally. So the starting point here is expect to be a continuous learner, and expect to be self-directed to make a success in your career, because this is a field where it's the community of knowledge that's much more powerful, probably, than the peers in your organization, because there's probably only going to be a small number, if any, peers within your companies that have this skill set and that are going to be peers and mentors to you in this event. So a couple of just closing notes to leave you on, and these are just personal opinion, of course, thinking about your career and how you manage it. Bonuses and rewards are given as part of past performance. This is recognition for something that you've achieved or goals you've met. But promotions are based on future impact. And so future impact in particular, the ability to get promoted. Think about, I think about what I promote on as a manager. I promote individuals who equip other people to be successful. A great manager is somebody who makes their team successful, who maybe doesn't have the individual expertise of certain individuals, but who helps equip them to the manager needs to be an asset to other people. So while you're thinking about all these communities that you can join, I really encourage you to think right away about how you can be a mentor and how you can encourage others, be a leader here. Because no matter where you are in your career journey, if you're here today, there's somebody who's earlier in their career than you are right now. And there's an opportunity for you to be a leader and for you to influence the future impact of that person and their career. So yeah, leadership opportunities, they're not based solely on skill, they're based on enhancing the performance of others. Ethical hacking skills can definitely differentiate you in other security roles. So the bug bounty hunter is not the only career path for this certification. The penetration tester is not the only career path. If you have aspirations to be a SOC analyst, security engineer, auditor, consultant, every one of those career pathways is enhanced by possessing the skills of an ethical hacker. And I think of this as a way to differentiate yourself in some degrees. So even if this isn't the permanent role, the skill set is desirable no matter where you move into in the field of security. Last thing, ethical legal behavior is not negotiable. There are not exceptions. And so pay particular attention to this as you go along, because I do think that once an individual possesses skills to hack into systems, it could be tempting or it could be convenient to use those skills outside of the boundaries of standard practice, standard best practice of ethical behavior, and in some cases, wandering off territory into legal trouble. So take this very seriously, because the durability of your career and your ability to do some amazing work in this field does depend on missing the mark on legal and ethical behavior. When in doubt, if you have a situation that is not perfectly clear to you as to whether your actions you're about to take are ethical or legal, you have amazing assets and communities. You have communities from OWASP and EC Council and others. There's a community of individuals who would love to help you out to make those choices so that you can advance in your career and be an asset to organizations, be an asset to the community. So certainly, as you go through this journey of entering the career field, you're gonna learn more about that. But I would say that as you go through learning about hacking, you'll have to deliberately bring this topic back to ethical behavior, because the technology and the techniques are fantastic. This is a fun field to be in, and that might be an easy thing to forget about. So with that, I think I'm at time. We do have time for Q&A, and so we've got some time here. I would love to field any questions from anybody joining today. And so let me do this. I'm going to turn it back over to Ritika. I think we have a poll first.
Thank you so much, Carl. And it was a wonderful session. We have got actually till now so many questions, but I am asking all the audience, if you have any questions, please send it to us. If we cannot take the questions, you can directly write to us so that we can route it through Carl, or you can reach out to him on his LinkedIn. The LinkedIn account we have tagged in all our social media posts. Before we start the Q&A, today's webinar is in sync with our CEH certification. EC Council's CEH maps to many ethical hacking roles in the industry like security analyst, information security analyst, certified ethical hacker, security consultant, site administrator, and network management executive. Anyone with CEH certification is eligible for 18,000 plus number of immediate job openings with an average salary of $90,000 to $110,000 per annum. If you are interested to know more, kindly take part in the poll which is going to conduct now. Let us know your preferred mode of training and we will reach out to you. Shall we start the Q&A, Carl?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Our first question is, hello, will you be able to speak to how one can combine ethical hacking with artificial intelligence? Is there a field that combines both?
Great question. So I think the current generation of available sort of AI assets, let's say it's from OpenAI or Google, Microsoft right now. The way that I would look at them as an ethical hacker would be to look at them as your sort of your machine assistant. It can be add productivity and speed to an ethical hacker's toolkit. So, for example, if you're um, thinking about how to form a technique or troubleshoot a script, these are technologies really that act as like a second human assistant that really can dramatically improve your effectiveness and productivity. However, anytime that we're talking about an accelerator for testing or for ethical hacking, what we also have to consider is that it also accelerates our mistakes. And so what we do have in the current generation of sort of LLM capabilities that are really, let's call them in the news at least, those capabilities do have biases and deficiencies. So what I would be very cautious of is for an ethical hacker to use results of these models without validation. And so that's just the caution right now, is that the models are experimental and we should treat them as experimental, which is that they can be fantastically effective, but they should never be assumed, and in the current generation, they should not be assumed to replace human judgment in any respect. So though somebody described this to me, and I wish I could give credit to the person who mentioned this, but I would think of AI right now as a kindergartner, as a 5-year-old genius, which is, yes, this 5-year-old is a genius, but 5-year-olds don't know a lot about the world. And you're an adult, you know more about the world. So fact check everything that you get from the models. But when you have access to a genius, it would be use that genius to your advantage. Just don't assume that every result is correct. We're also finding, for example, I think the technologies like GitHub, Pilot, many security companies are coming out with like AI assisted co-piloting technologies. And if I were to guess, I'd say that for the next 2-3 years, our security platforms from Flawless and Tenable and Netscope and CrowdStrike, I'm just mentioning a few names, each of those technologies having AI assisted user capabilities is probably where we're going to see most of it manifested in security. And so for your own tool set, whether it's Metasploit or other tools that you're using as part of a testing event or a research, try them out, because those AI assist technologies are coming online quickly, and that's a huge benefit.
Thank you, Carl, for the answer. So, our next question is, can you share a few insights about cloud security too?
Sure. So I mean, what we have in cloud security really is, qualitatively, we're moving our workloads from an on-premise data center to a third-party hosted world. And the third-party hosted world, I think, happens in 2 flavors, and each of the flavors of cloud is very different. So one is lift and shift, which is where we take our on-premise servers and effectively we toss them up to the cloud, Azure, Google, AWS, as is. And when we do lift and shift as is, we apply disciplines that we applied in the legacy world, but really nothing changes other than who we're paying monthly money to. So from a security perspective, lift and shift environments really aren't much different than on-prem environment. It's just a different financial model behind it. Where things change dramatically is when we take legacy systems and we move them to called microservices architectures or cloud native workloads. Cloud native workloads being Kubernetes, Docker clusters, serverless functions for applications. That's when the security dynamic changes dramatically, because we're talking about computing workloads whose existence is ephemeral, it's temporary. And there's the immutable workloads where we as a security team have to relearn essentially the chess game of attacker defender in a cloud native world. So one particular organization called the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, CNCF, is a great place to start to learn about cloud native computing. And so I'd say as a security professional, it's the cloud native computing where we have to rethink our entire training, our strategy, our knowledge set is very different. If you've gone through like a lift and shift change, mostly things of a chess game of attacker and defender stay the same.
Thank you, Carl. Our next question is, what are the main things that an organization sees on one's resume while applying for an ethical hacking job or related to that?
Well, for applying for like an ethical hacking role, let's say it's a red team or pen tester or purple team role, what I'm going to want to see is essentially, and we had the slide earlier that talked about this 10 skill sets. I do want to see a certification. That's going to be important because if I have a certification like CEH that I can look to, I can sort of immediately validate the baseline level of knowledge that person possesses. Without a certification, what I have to do as a resume reader, as a hiring manager, is I have to take all of the experiences of that individual, and I have to kind of do the homework myself. Does the person have ethical and legal training? Do they have system administration or network administration basics? Do they have a training familiarity with frameworks, tools, technologies, etc.? And so I think that what it does is I have to do my own homework on the candidate and almost create a mapping of whether that person possesses the skills versus the candidate who's coming in with a certification. And now I know that they have the base skills, and so really all I'm trying to find is where in the like in the how they performed in their roles. And that's just a question then I might be asking questions about results, like how effective have they been and how can they demonstrate in their history that they've performed well. So it's really important because it is true, for better or worse, that most roles in security, there's 50 people and 100 people applying. And so if you're asking me as a hiring manager to add up the total skills and experiences of a person, a certification makes that resume much, much easier for me to understand what that person brings to the table.
Nice. Our next question is, I am a student. What are the important skill set required to become a security architect?
Well, a security architect role would typically be a person who has established themselves in probably a couple of different security roles and disciplines, and then who graduates to be a security architect. So what you are as an architect is you're a planner. So your role is to sort of design the architectural patterns that an organization uses for the big picture. So it's pretty unusual to find somebody entering the field picture because it is like an apprentice career path. So an apprenticeship, usually for a security architect, starts with being a systems engineer, a network engineer, a security engineer, because you have to practice and develop a competency in building and deploying individual systems, usually before graduating then to being an architect, which is you are the planner of a bigger picture. And it is true that security architecture roles in the organizations I've been, those usually have been people who've been usually at least 10 years in their career, because they have the breadth of experience over time that informs good architectural decisions. Yes, certifications like TOGAF, the Open Group Architecture Framework, absolutely useful. So please start preparing yourself for the architecture foundations like TOGAF certifications. But just bear in mind that usually that's a career field that's earned over time.
Thank you for the answer, Carl. Our next question is, as someone who have a computer science background, where do I start from in cybersecurity certification, even though I have worked for over 10 years.
Can you repeat that? What was the first background?
He is from computer science background.
Oh, well, if you're a computer science background, hopefully, I think that oftentimes people with computer science backgrounds find a number of security disciplines to be relatively simple is not the right word. Your ability to learn this content area is going to be very high because computer science teaches us to think and build computing machines. And oftentimes I think you'll find that you will understand mechanically what's happening under the hood of systems, networking, applications, server technologies. Your speed to learn is probably going to be faster than the rest of us. And so I still think that the computer science background is, if we looked at the 10 skills and competencies, number 2 and number 3, networking, systems administration, or systems development, that primarily is going to make those sections. You're probably going to be a faster study than the rest of us, but it still is important to look at the breadth of capabilities, because even a computer science background, but person still needs to put the work in when it comes to learning security technologies, learning the tools of the trade, as well as the ethical legal considerations. So I still think that the certification route is the right way to go. I just think that you're going to find maybe a couple sections be pretty easy that the rest of us have to spend a lot of time studying for.
Thank you so much, Carl. Our last question we are taking. What are the emerging trends and evolving specializations within the field of ethical hacking, and how can individuals strategically navigate these opportunities to build a successful and fulfilling career in ethical hacking?
I think the big trend that's emerged over the last couple of years that I still see, still early and it has a long way to go, is the bug bounty platforms. In the terminology of the recent past, I think we call it the gig economy. And the gig economy is where individual people can take on pieces of work that are large, medium, and small, and at their discretion. They can individuals acting independently rather than an employer corporation being the only job path. There are a lot of people today, thousands of people who have an ethical hacking background, who are making a very comfortable living, focusing on the bug bounty programs and applying an ethical hacking skill set, and maybe the corporate world is not their best career path, but there's opportunity there. So this is a really interesting time. That trend is only going to continue. I think that what we'll see that increasingly security organizations outside of ethical hacking and pen testing also adopt other areas where individual contributors are welcome. I think that's the stigma of the past, was that you had to be an employee of an organization to get work. Now the opportunity is there for us to work as individuals and work across companies as essentially self-employed contractors. That's a really positive thing. And I'm not sure, what the future holds, but I would be very, very surprised to learn a year from now, 3 years from now, that trend did not continue. I do think that's absolutely the trend that we can look to, and to take advantage of that in this discipline it's all there for you, because the training communities, the communities of practitioners are all there, almost always free. Certifications and training, some of them you do have to pay for, but there's so much available support as an individual that it's just a great time to be in this field, because the job opportunities are not just to join a corporation. There's just a universe of opportunity out there as an individual by looking at the bug bounty platforms in particular.
Thank you so much, Carl, for answering those questions and for the great presentation. And I'm sure that the entire audience is very much grateful to that as well. And we have got so many good feedback also on that. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we are looking for more and more sessions with you in our future. Before we conclude the webinar, Carl, would you like to give a small message to our audience?
Um, And the message is this is the field of ethical hacking is one that all of the tools that you need to be successful. They're all available to you right now. Doesn't require a fancy college degree. Doesn't require a job in a huge bank corporation. This is a fantastic time to be entering this field because there's so much opportunity here. There's so many jobs available, those positions available, whether you want to work independently. I'm thrilled to be able to talk with everybody, and I hope this gives you um, some insight, but also just a little bit of energy to keep going in this field because there's a lot here that is waiting for you to take advantage of.
Thank you so much for the message to our audience, Carl. Uh, Before we end the session, I would like to announce our next Cyber Talks session, which is Modern CISO Challenges, Fostering a Security Culture in Global Organizations, is scheduled for 14th of December 2023 by George Dobrier. This session is an expert presentation and also a CISO story. To register for this session, please go to our website, which is www.eccu.edu/cyber-talks. The link is given in the chat section. Hope to see you all on 14th of December of this month. With this, we are ending the session. You all may disconnect your line. Thank you. Thank you so much, Carl.
Thank you.